Hello, everyone. Welcome back. So this is actually part two from last week's video. So if you haven't watched that one, I recommend you go back and watch it. It was about a part who I began to call Harry, kind of looked like Chewbacca, and he would give me these surges of adrenaline, but almost like a punishment anytime I would even think about helping someone with their own trauma. And content warning, with that video and with this one, I'm going to talk about being a survivor of suicide. And also in this one, there's a part that's kind of violent, kind of self-harming. So just be aware of that. So in the last one, though, this Harry was protecting my 36-year-old part on the day of my first husband's suicide. And she was stuck there in the bed, and myself was able to tend to her and really do a lot with her. We did an unburdening ritual where she released her grief, collected her tears, and put them in the ocean. But she was not completely unburdened. She had another burden of self-blame and guilt. And so that had really not been unburdened. So my practice was after that to meet with parts every day for, 3 or 4 weeks. And it was really interesting. I would meet with her every day, and she would just be in the bed. She would just be completely lifeless, crying, no energy, like depressed essentially in the bed. And I would just go there and I would be with her. And I would sometimes enlist other parts and we would rub her back and just allow her to be there. There was no rushing her to get out or anything like that. But I want to tell you about some other things that occurred during this time. So several days after that originally meeting Harry and the 36-year-old girl, I got this, same sudden pang of panic. And I tried to remember, what protector is this? And oh, this is Harry. And so I turned toward him and I said, is the 36-year-old girl triggered right now? Is there something wrong? And then I rushed in to try to check on her without really getting permission from, because I wasn't aware actually at that time that there was also another part that protected her, and really protected her, believing that she was responsible, which you'll see. So I just went straight in to try to check on her. And what's interesting also in this is that I saw myself going toward the woman in the bed to comfort her. And if you ever have this experience, if you are visual and you see yourself going in, that it just means that's a self-like part or a caretaking part, because as the self, it's like you're an avatar. You would just see your hands in front of you. You wouldn't actually see yourself. Um, so this was actually one of the most surprising things that happened in my system in all of my work. Very shocking. Um, as I was watching this other caretaking part go to her, suddenly there was a part that came in. It was very violent and had a razor blade and just started cutting her all over her back. And it was bloody and it was gory. It was terrible. And I don't even watch any violence or any gore. It was a pretty um, just shocking thing. It wasn't something that I felt like I was making up at all. It felt very surprising to me. And this creature that was doing that kind of looked like Golum. It wasn't Golum, but I called him Golum for a long time because that was the closest thing. It was kind of impish. And Gollum from the Lord of the Rings, is kind of like hunched over and like a white, almost like an old man's body. But this creature didn't have a face at all. It was just completely blank. And what's interesting, if you've followed my work, you know that I have a part named Sebastian, who is my angry defender of all of my exiles. And he immediately rushed in and pushed Golum off of the girl. And I, at this point, had developed quite a relationship with Sebastian and really trusted him and knew that he was very loyal to the exiles. So I asked him if he could tend to the girl's wounds that Golum had just produced, and so that I could go and speak with Golum. Now, I was very much in self, even though this was surprising to me. I did not feel afraid of Golum. And so I went, so she was in the bedroom in my apartment at the time, and I found him on the stairs leading down to the first floor. And he was just hunched over. Again, he had no face, but I genuinely felt curious with him. So I asked him, why did you feel like you needed to cut her? I really wanted to understand. And he said, she's bad. She's very bad. It's her fault. She needs to be punished. She needs to suffer. And so as a self, I said, how does cutting her and punishing her help her? And he said, it makes her not fail again, not hurt anyone ever again. And I said, with genuine curiosity, is this strategy working? Does punishing her and hurting her help her do better and not hurt other people? And he dropped his head and he shook it and he said, no, no, it doesn't achieve it, he said. And then I said, I get that you're trying to help her. Like it, the self, it's really fascinating because even when a part is this insidious, right, is this violent, has this negative impact, the self can see through to the positive intention that he does not want this to happen again, never again. And so I said, I see that you have a good intention, and I too really want to help her. So what do you think about me trying a different way to help her, since that's not really working? And this character is very mischievous, and he kind of rubbed his hands together and he said, I'll let you try. And I asked him, hypothetically, if you didn't have to spend so much time and energy punishing the 36-year-old woman, what would you rather do? And he said he would want to be clever and playful. And he said he would be a friend to the alien. So some of you who've watched my past work, I have a part who I call the ink cloud alien, who was initially an ink cloud, and he would cause fatigue or illness in order to get me attention and help me be seen. And when he was unburdened, he became an alien, and his new role was as comedian of my system. So this Golem-like character is saying he wants to be the alien's sidekick, but with a darker sense of humor, he said. And he said, and I will also be able to relate to the pain of others. And in that moment, I really sensed that he held a lot of pain. It was really interesting because clearly he had come out as this very violent character. And in that moment, he just seemed so vulnerable. And so I said, that sounds like a good use of your energy. And that was all I did in that moment. I kind of went back and made sure that the girl was okay and there were other parts taking care of her. But then there was another day. So another aspect of this Golem character is this became kind of his his catchphrase is and I guess I won't say the words, but he would call me an effing piece of shit. That was his catchphrase. It would just come in my brain saying that, toward another part. And it's interesting because I don't think I've ever said anything like that to a person outside of me, but I would have this voice inside of me saying that to parts all the time. Oh, you effing piece of, and this was very much something that my first husband would say to me in my first marriage all the time. It was quite abusive. And so I really felt like Golum had kind of taken on a lot of his energy, but that became a way that I knew when he was there, because don't have any other parts actually inside of me that will cuss me out or cuss other parts of me out. So there was a day where I heard this voice, this telltale sign that Golum was there. And I just had this thought, because at that point I had also met an inner critic that I called Gertrude. And I actually do more work with her, and I'll talk about that in the next session. But I was curious, I thought, is this just Gertrude, but kind of on steroids? And so I always tell my clients, whenever you're not sure, just go in directly and ask. And so I kind of went into my mind's eye and tried to find Golum, and found him in the same spot that I had left him the time before, which was on the stairs there uh, by the girl's bedroom. And I asked him, I said, I'm just so curious, are you Gertrude? And he looked at me like I was crazy. And he said, no, she is an accumulation of all your socialization, the voices of parents, teachers, the shoulds and the shouldn'ts. I am much more sinister and cruel than her. I am darker. But sometimes I do add kindling to Gertrude's fire so I can make it bigger, he said. And he seemed very proud of that. And I said, you remind me a lot of Ronald. Do you carry Ronald's energy? That's the name of my first husband. And he then sat down on the stairs and put his head between his knees like he was very sad. And he said, yes. And it was really fascinating. It was at that moment that I realized that he, in some ways, was trying to keep Ronald alive by holding this very nasty energy. And and at another time, I ended up coming to him, and but quite frankly, it was almost a year later that I asked him, "Are you ready to release Ronald's energy from the system?" He was not ready for quite some time. And during that time, though, I had built a relationship with him. So it was interesting because I would always know when he was there, because he would say, "You effing piece of shit," and I would, but before that, it felt terrorizing. The other parts hated it. But once I knew, oh, this is Golum, I would just turn and I would say, "Oh, hey, Golum, you're here. What are you upset about? Who are you pointing at? What are they doing? Can I go help them?" And he would relax immediately. But it wasn't actually for a year that he was willing to release the energy of my first husband. And then he actually turned into instead of the form of Golum, of like a demon, he turned into a koala bear that, again, was just very sweet and vulnerable. He still has this kind of mischievous nature to him. But and also I asked him what he wanted to be called instead of Gollum. And that was an interesting situation, because he said he wanted to be called Ronnie in honor of my first husband. But many other parts in my system were not okay with that. They did not want any part of Ronald to be in my system. And so he agreed to be called Sunny instead. So now his name is Sunny. And this is just an example of how we work with parts, we befriend them, we get to know them. And there really is this very gradual trust and gradual ability to release burdens. And there's no rush to it, there's no forcing. And likewise, coming back to the 36-year-old girl, I would go in my system and check on her every single day for a few minutes or so and just see how she was doing. And like I said, she was always in the bed, just depressed. And it was about 3 weeks in, so about 21 days of going and checking on her, that I remember going into my mind's eye, going to the bed, and she wasn't there. And another part said, "She's in the shower. She got up, she's showering, she's getting dressed." And it felt like this incredible accomplishment, this incredible triumph, that she finally felt okay enough to get up. Um, and and then from then on in my system, every time I would come and check on her, she was very active. She would go running. She would, dance. She would like just do very active things and creative things. So um, I say this because in my the weekly IFS group, we were talking about this, that sometimes the unburdening isn't immediate in that ritual that happens. It really occurs in the secure attachment that is built between the self and the part over that 3 or 4 weeks. That is really where the healing happens, and where the neural pathways in our brain are changed to where these parts are not alone anymore, and they really trust that. And particularly with her, I enlisted the help of all the unburdened parts in my system to just be there for her and give her support. And there's someone in the weekly IFS group that calls it her friendship circle. And whenever a part is unburdened, they're welcomed into the friendship circle, and there's just joy and dancing and laughing and acceptance. And so it was very, very much like that with this part as well. So I just wanted to share that with you, because sometimes the unburdening is not overnight, it's not in an instant. It really is, but it is still possible. And it really is in the relationship that is built, the consistent relationship between self and parts. So if you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments below. And probably in a couple weeks, I will do the final video in this series, which is about my main inner critic, because I actually have met many. And I'll see you next time.